Hello, we're back, and I've got some updates here on the diorama. A couple things. The road base here is almost dry. It actually dried a lot faster this time. So I don't know if I put in less water or if it's our weather, which has been really hot. I don't know, but it only took about 2 days for it to get to this point, and when it turns completely white, it's dry. It probably looks completely white on the video, but it's actually just a little bit gray, and it's cool to the touch, which means it still has a little bit of water in it. However, you'll notice the curb or that border is off, and I did what I almost always do with these dioramas. I changed my mind in the middle of the night. So what I did was I got to thinking, instead of a perfect road that didn't seem too spooky and haunted housey for what I was after here, I wanted the road to be a little bit more beat up. And so before this dried completely, I came in, I took the borders out, so that's this trim you see here, which most of this again is going to be covered up with landscaping. And then I took a rock, let me make sure you can see that. Yeah, and then I took a rock and I just kind of crunched around the corners, and that's going to give it this old road asphalt look, or what I'm hoping it will, so it looks like the asphalt kind of falls apart as it hits the dirt. And remember, there won't be a ledge here. The dirt's going to come up to the road. We want the road raised a little bit so it looks like the water would run off. But then I came in and I used water, sprayed water on top of the surface and smoothed that water in. Now that gave this a smooth surface. That's something probably most of us end up doing. But what you might not know is then when you come in and kind of press something into it, that smooth surface with the water is softer than the surface beneath it. So it rips up kind of like a sheet of paper of surface, and it makes it look like it's asphalt with like dirt underneath it, if that makes sense. So it kind of gives it a rim or an edge where that asphalt would end and the dirt. So instead of just kind of smashing holes in it, this should look more realistic. Now, I'm not quite sure what the finished look will be, whether I put water into these or fake water, or if I put dirt in them. I don't know yet. I'll figure that out as I go. But again, I seem to always do that. I change my mind. That's just part of this hobby. Okay, so here's where we're at with those latex molds that I made from the rocks. These are the actual molds. Now, they don't look like much. They look kind of like little blobby things. We're going to fill this up with plaster, and then when we remove it, we're going to have a perfect mold of that rock that we made earlier. But just to show you how easy it is to make, here is the rock that we painted on before. And you can see I have not covered this with a ton of latex. If you want your molds to last a long, long time, I would really put the latex on thick. But it just peels off. So I've already started an edge here. That's the hardest part. And you just kind of peel around. Try to do this so the camera can see it. And then when you're done, throw your rock away. You don't need that. Flip this over, and now we'll fill that with plaster, and we'll have rock molds. But now this, move this back a little ways, will go in a tub of sand. This is just like beach sand, or dirt will work, anything. It doesn't, you know, cement sand would work just fine. And then we're just going to kind of push these guys down in there. Try not to get any sand in them. You can change the shape all you want of these things. It's just going to give it some support. So when we pour the plaster in, there's something to hold the sides. This also helps change the shape of each rock a little bit, because the sand will you know, pinch in a little bit more. I'm kind of after like shale or something with these. Alright, we're going to mix up our plaster and we'll pour it in our mold next. For this I'm going to be using lightweight hydrocal plaster. This is, well, actually I don't know what it is, but I think it's a paper product that works the same as plaster. It's just really, really light. And so I'm not going to be adding any weight to this. Okay, and when we're done, I didn't mention the ratio. According to the package, it's 2.5 to 1. Okay, we're back, and here you can see I've added some of these rocks to the landscape, and I've plastered them in place. Now those rocks, those pieces, so this piece right here, for instance, that's one casting. That was originally glued into place and then plastered over. And I'll kind of zoom in here, and you can see there's still some kind of bits and pieces that need to be scraped away here. But all of this was plastered over to make it seamless. But I really like this part over here. Now, we were after kind of a creepy, spooky scene. And you'll notice there's, like I said, all this seaming in here. We'll take care of that. That won't show up as obvious as it looks like here once we get some paint on it. And you see all over the whole thing, it's a little rough right now, until we really get in there and kind of clean this up. So I've got one new mold here. Looks like a little egg cooking. That new mold we're going to take out in a second. I'll show you what that rock looks like. One last thing, when you glue these into place, don't expect them to fit perfectly. They won't. They'll stick out. They'll look odd. You just fill in the gaps with more plaster or hydrocal if you're using hydrocal. I used plaster for the gaps, hydrocal for the rocks here. That way. By the way, here are a few of the rocks that came out of those molds. Here's one. Yeah, they look just like those rocks. Yeah, and then I just put these on here, just like that. And then I cover them in with plaster. Here's another one. This one came from a mold that I bought. I've broken this one up. And I've also used quite a few of these are from molds that I already had because I had already made a lot of these rocks. So I just used some extras that I had, but I've mixed in the rocks that I made myself. Ooh, yeah, I can do this with one hand. And we'll pull that back. Try not to get it in the sand. And there is our rock. And it looks just like the edge of the rock that I made that mold from. So it's a really great way to just make some quick rock molds, and you just stick them on that base that we made earlier. Okay, and probably not too noticeable, but I basically rounded off all those sharp edges. I've squared off the edge. I don't know if that'll show up there. Best I can. And again, none of this, we're not going to really see a lot of this. It's going to be covered. But I think that looks pretty good. A few pieces fell off here. I'll glue those back on in a second. But I think we're ready to start painting this thing. Okay, sorry about the fan there in the background, but I've turned down the lighting so you can see some contrast. And everything's pretty smoothed out. I did give the road another once over with some smoothing. You can see everything's pretty well squared off on the corners. And we've carved in some nice little details with the Dremel. Again, most of that's going to be covered up, but at this point I don't know what you're going to see and what you aren't. One trick, when you mix your plaster and you end up with all this kind of crusty leftover stuff in the bottom, don't just throw that out. Throw some water in here. Scrape all this off. It'll break up into little chips when it's dry, and what you'll be left with is these little pieces, and you can see where I've kind of added some of these little pieces and glued them on. This is going to be my rubble and my shale, so you don't really have to waste anything. when you're done. If you are doing this, this works a lot better with plaster, as it's a lot stronger than the hydrocal. The hydrocal just kind of turns to dust if you try to do this. So this is all plaster here. But yeah, you can kind of fill in the gaps and get like a medium detail in there, and everything will look a lot better. All right, well, next we're going to be painting this. I'm going to let this dry, and next we'll be back with some paint.